Good morning. Is this thing working all right? Can I, because I wasn't here yesterday, unfortunately, so I'd like to get a sense of who's in the room. Can you tell me how many people here are business owners? Hands up if you're a business owner. How many of those with their hands up would consider themselves to be entrepreneurs? That's really interesting. And how many people who didn't put their hand up, who don't currently have a business, would consider themselves to be entrepreneurs? Fabulous. So I've been asking this question for about 5 years now, and this is the highest percentage of business owner to entrepreneur I've ever seen. And that tells me something about this audience, but it also tells me that the world is moving, and we're moving towards a world of entrepreneurship. So there are people in this room who don't have a business and yet are entrepreneurial, which I think is really exciting for the future. I think we're standing on the cusp of something which looks like a paradigm shift into entrepreneurship, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. So what I'm actually talking about is business leadership. So what does business leadership mean in a context of entrepreneurship? And now you're all looking at this and going, great, it's going to be one of those business leadership conversations. He's going to start quoting the Lao Tse in a minute, and he's going to start quoting Bernard Montgomery around military leadership. And I'm guessing there are not many people here who are currently running a pan-European empire or have 750,000 men under arms, unless I'm wrong about my audience. So this is kind of useful, but not as useful as that, in my view. Now, what is that? Well, our job is to work with entrepreneurs. So we literally have worked with thousands of entrepreneurs across the world. And the defining characteristic of successful entrepreneurs is that is what they do. Now, I need to explain what I mean by that. So set the context. If you're going to be a successful entrepreneur, if you are a successful entrepreneur, what you need to do and learn how to do every day is set context for the people that are involved in your organization, in your circle of partnership. So every time a decision comes up, every time you have a meeting, a telephone call, an idea, it has to be set against the context. Otherwise, you will get dragged into the content. Content, to me, is around business management. I'm not interested in business management. There are brilliant people in the world who do business management. Our job is about creating entrepreneurship. Our job is about creating business leadership. Business leadership is about context. So there's a wonderful German proverb which says the main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing. The main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing. So all that means is, what is it, the why? What is the actual reason we're doing this? Because if you're not aware of that, then what happens is you end up deep down into the content of the problem. So it's quite a difficult concept to get your head around, I think. But a couple of examples. We have a wonderful business we work with, and they chose a context for their business of freedom. Specifically, we will create the freedom for people to be extraordinary. Now, what that means is every time they make a decision based on, will this create freedom? They attract the most incredible talent. But the other thing is they attract brands and companies to work with them as suppliers who want their brand, their product, their company to be extraordinary. So their decision is based on freedom. It's a choice. It might have been something else, but at least they have a high context. Kevin Roberts. Anyone know Kevin Roberts? He's the global CEO of Saatchi's. He taught me something, which is how I now run my business. And it is about context. Kevin said, and this is what I do now, just do 10 things in the next 100 days. Everything else looks after itself. So the way I run my business, I do 10 things in 100 days. Now those 10 things have to therefore be quite contextual. And everyone who reports to me does 10 things in 100 days. They're slightly more content related. So context, the power of context. Manage the energy. What the heck does that mean? Well, if you think about any organization, any business, any community, what it's really around is lots of little bits of energy running around. All of us are little bits of energy. And if we can get them all heading in the same direction, that's called success. That's called wealth, that's called joy, that's called fulfillment. So managing the energy is around inspiring those people. So if you are going to be an entrepreneur, I have some bad news for you. You are going to have to get comfortable with the word inspire. You need to be inspirational. You need to own that word. Because if you're not inspiring people, then your business, your organization, your passion, your vision will never grow bigger than what you can currently manage. Your choice is to say, no, I'm going to be inspiring. Coach, don't play is a bit easier to get your head around. Essentially, coach, don't play simply says, you're not on the field anymore. Business management is being on the field. You're scoring the goal. You're not delegating in this world. You're not midfield feeding forward. What you're doing is you're on the touchline. So set the context, manage the energy, coach, don't play. I had breakfast with a guy yesterday who was absolutely brilliant about managing energy. The first thing he does every single day of his life when he wakes up is he sends a blog to everybody who works with him, all of his team. He's got 180 people or something, and he writes to them every day. He spends 50% of his working life walking the floor of his company. 50%. Yesterday, I worked with one of the largest investment banks in the world, and they wouldn't imagine doing anything like that, and they certainly never leave their offices. Because if I leave my office, I've got to go and talk to these people. I wouldn't want to do that. So, inspiring, manage the energy. And this is kind of why this is important. This cuts to the difference between you, entrepreneurs, and the people who run the largest corporations in the world, other than the ones that are run by entrepreneurs. So here's my theory. My theory is that every business in the world understands how it does what it does. Every business in the world understands how it makes services, sells, distributes, administers its product. Would you agree? I think quite a lot of businesses understand what they do. So quite a lot of businesses understand the unique blend of intelligence and knowledge and experience and relationships and passion that make up the intellectual property that sits at the heart of their business. That's the fundamental what. Understand your what. That drives your innovation strategy. That drives your future growth. I think very few businesses understand why. I think most businesses don't even think about why. Certainly the bank I was with yesterday, they were mystified by what I was talking about. Can anyone think of a business that does understand its why? Apple. Apple knows why. And of course, it's the classic example, and it's really easy and lazy to use it, but boy, it's true. You go into an Apple store, the passion with which they come up to you. I went to buy an apple. They looked at me and they said, I don't think you would like an apple, sir. I don't think an apple is for you. They were passionate about who was going to be the apple guy, and it wasn't going to be me. It really irritated me, so I bought one. Because I was wearing a suit. But it's wonderful. They understand why. Put a ding in the universe. I mean, how inspiring is that? Put a ding in the universe. That's what we do. It isn't about making computers. So commercially what that means is suddenly now I can make telecommunications products and music players. I'm not tied into what I was doing before. It's fantastically liberating. So as an entrepreneur, in inspiring people, it is about creating the why. So Martin Luther King, when he stood up in front of 250,000 people in 1963 in Washington, did not say, I have a plan. And yet, most business operators do say every day, hey, we've got a plan, and expect people to get excited and follow them. They won't. Your job is to inspire. Your job is to have a dream. And this quote is really cool because it's true. The person who understands how they do what they do, they're going to have a job, but the person who understands why will always be their boss because they are the entrepreneur. Now, there's a really interesting thing that I've been observing in the last few years, because I'm considerably older than most of the people in this audience, not as old as some, and that is that the current generation of young people doesn't look anything like any generation of young people that we've ever seen before. And it isn't just to do with where they wear their waistbands, but it is to do with how they view the world. And this is what I believe about this, that this is a generation that has grown up in a world of abundance. So throughout the current generations, childhood and adolescence, there was plenty, an abundance of information, but also an abundance of wealth for most of them. This current recession, depression, is a blip on a long period of sustained growth. And what this means, I think, is psychologically, they want things to happen now. They don't want to wait. They're not interested in hierarchy. They're not interested in waiting for things. They want it now, because that's what they've always experienced. The second thing is they understand the cost of all of that growth, because they've seen it in their parents, because they've seen that my generation, both parents have a job. Perhaps a little older than me, but our generation broadly, they both have jobs. They both work for some faceless bureaucracy of a corporate. They don't want that for themselves. And again, I'm generalizing. So what they want is freedom. And the third thing is they've understood at some level, I believe, the cost of all of this growth, both in terms of its impact on the planet and its impact on the social fabric of our societies in the West. So they want to understand what you believe in before they're going to even deal with you. Now, I'm generalizing. But if we look at a generation that goes, I want it now, I want freedom, and I want to understand what your purpose is, I have just described an entrepreneur. And in America, 52% of the millennium generation have already started their first business or have a credible plan to create one. In their heads, they are already entrepreneurs. Now, what does this mean to us who are trying to establish our own businesses? The talent that we need to attract to run our businesses don't want to work for us because they're going to do it themselves. So, corporates, there is an Anglo-Saxon expression for what the very large corporations in the economy are doing, and I can't use that. They are somewhat nervous about the impact on their future. For us as entrepreneurs, this is brilliant news, because all we need to do is structure our businesses such that they attract talent, and the talent is looking for those three things. So there's a brilliant guy called Dan Pink. Are you aware of Dan Pink? Dan Pink is a god that bestrides this stage. If you Google Dan Pink on motivation, which some of you will have done, watch that film. It's wonderful. And Dan Pink at the heart, and I apologize if I misquote Dan, but at the heart he basically says, look, there are three things people want from their work, from the experience of working with us. Those three things are autonomy, treat me with a bit of respect, allow me to be a little bit entrepreneurial, mastery, let me learn something every day. And this is not about, can I take my accountancy exams? This is about how can I profoundly develop myself as a human being within your organization. And purpose. Tell me why we're doing this. What is it about this organization that we work with, that we've joined, that we are in, that is going to make things better, that is going to change the world? Because that's what I want. I want to work somewhere which is going to change the world. I want to work for the company that gives people the freedom to be extraordinary. And if you don't have a context, if you don't have a big why, a purpose, then you're not going to get any talent. The bank I was with yesterday, they are not going to have any talent. And they know it. So they're talking about entrepreneurship, which is just rubbish, because they don't understand the why. If you say to them, Martin Luther King did not stand up in front of 250,000 people and say, I have a plan, they'll go, didn't he? That sounds very rational. So, we are moving into the world of entrepreneurs, which is very, very exciting. We're moving into a world in which the young people are instinctively entrepreneurial. So if we want to build great businesses, it sounds kind of easy, because all we need to do is understand why we're doing it, to create a really inspiring message, give people autonomy, mastery, and purpose, and they will join us, and we will have a fantastic business. They will work blood, sweat, and tears because they believe in what we believe in, not just money. So is that all we need to do to create businesses? It's even better than that. And this is where I become an accountant. What's really exciting about being an entrepreneur is what we get to create is wealth. Now, in my very simple world, there are only two ways that you can create wealth in a business. You can either drive profit, or you can drive the multiple that creates the asset value. So at a very simple level, the definition of a valuation of a business is profit times a multiple. Now, that's interesting. Now, what that red dot is supposed to represent is it's supposed to be over the top of the M. This is a definition of the issue between Apple and Microsoft. That Mr. Gates has just moved that red dot. So, multiple. So what am I talking about here? So how many of us focus our time when we're running our businesses on profit? How much of our time, thank you, how much of our time is actually spent worrying about where's the revenue coming from, how do we reduce our costs? And how many of us spend our time thinking about the multiple? We'll have a conversation later, sir. So that's really interesting. And how many of us have set our commercial objectives out into the future based on a revenue calculation? I am going to be turning over 2 million, 20 million, 200 million by this date. How many people have set their future forecast on an equity asset valuation forecast? Excellent. So, most people in most businesses think about profit all the time. Some businesses think about asset because they're social enterprise vehicles. Now, that's interesting. So now I've just gone completely off-piste and said, Hank, that social enterprise, a sense of social purpose, is a business asset. Well, how does that work? But it's absolutely true. Let me talk to you about what I believe to be asset. And let me explain what my job is in the world. My job in the world and the company that I represent have a very simple thing that we have to do. And that is to create a world, to create a process, a structure, a language, a methodology which will allow entrepreneurs to have a business that will generate big wealth, significant wealth, and give them the freedom to express and enjoy that, and attach them to a sense of purpose as to why that's important. So to me, there is no disconnect, there is no complication between the fact that you can have a lot of money and also be sustainable. That those two things are hand in hand. The definition of sustainability in my world is people, planet, and profit. So, asset, to me, is about lots of things. It's about wealth, but wealth is both cultural and commercial. So it's both about more money, but also more time and more purpose. The other thing about chasing profit is that if you chase profit, all you're going to get is more profit, which is okay, but doesn't really build your wealth. Not in the long term, not sustainably. It also tends to, in a small business, keep you on a little hamster wheel, which will please your accountant, because you run round and round and round this thing, generating more and more profit. Actually, you're not building wealth. You're not building wealth either culturally or commercially. So here is a really dull piece of business analysis which will tell you how you can create wealth in a business. If you want to know how analysts, fund managers, and business acquirers value business, that's it. So below that line, there's a lot of red stuff. That red stuff is profit. And there is an assumption that a business that will meet an industry benchmark is going to be able to do the things that are below the line. So, in other words, there is an average multiple for your business, any business, within an industry. It says 1 there. If you are in an industry where the multiple is 1, get out of that industry. Most benchmarks are obviously 4, 8, 10. Some technology industries are a lot harder than that. So what I'm talking about here is the multiple of profit that represents the value of that business. And that benchmark will be discounted if you get the stuff below the line wrong. So if your costs are out of control, if your revenue is very dependent on one particular client, for example, if you've got lazy assets sitting around your balance sheet and you don't know what they are, if you have got your liability policies wrong, etc., etc. And fundamentally, if your management team is poor, you will be caned for having a poor management team. And we know that because you just have to look at how industry businesses are valued, and poor management team, 50% off the share price. Which is why asset venture capitalists, private equity people always say we invest in the management team. Because basically they're too lazy to look at the detail of this, and they go, well, that's an interesting way of assessing quality. So let's assume that we've done all that, because that's all pretty boring, and as an entrepreneur, you shouldn't be doing that. You do it because you have to. What you need to be doing is getting into the top half of this equation. So how do we build real wealth? Number one, culture and talent. We're about to enter a period of sustained economic growth. You heard it here. I genuinely believe, having looked at all the figures, that this depression is coming to an end and we are about to go into a period of growth. If you're young now, or you've just established a business now, you are very fortunate. I'm not saying it's going to happen tomorrow, but it is going to be sustainable growth. That's my personal view. I'm not giving you any investment advice. But if that is the case, the first thing you need to do, and the thing you need to do now, is get your culture right. Because one of the things we also know is that there is going to be a talent shortage. Because in a growing economy, one of the things we're going to run out of very quickly is talent. And we already know that what talent wants from an organization is autonomy, mastery, and purpose. That's culture. Number one, get your culture right. Now, what is quite nice is you get 10% increase on your valuation if you have a nice culture, if you happen to be an analyst. So what does that mean? That means, okay, my profit is £1 million, my industry benchmark is 10, I've just made myself an additional £1 million of equity value just by getting my culture right. Simplistically. Much more interesting is what happens a bit further up. So what you really need to be doing is leveraging and using all of that talent and creation and culture and wonderfulness to drive innovation into product, extension and innovation, and possibly channel innovation depending on who you are. And all this stuff about social media is just another channel. Innovation is everything. Culture is now, innovation is tomorrow. So how do you innovate? The first and most fundamental thing for us is that you must understand what is unique about your business. Every business in the world has a unique thing within it, a rocket fuel, a beating heart. Understand that, and you can create innovation, growth, wealth, sustainability. And often, what sits within that are the things you believe in. So, Saga. What is the intellectual property, which is really what I'm talking about, the fundamental understanding that Saga as a company has? Yeah, people over the age of 50. Age-specific is very polite. Old people. If you talked to Saga 25 years ago, they would have gone, well, actually, we're a travel company. So Saga had a choice of understanding what its intellectual property actually was. Now, had it said, no, we're a travel company, let's focus on our intellectual property around travel, that would have been a very rational decision. And they would now be a nice, I don't know, 100 million, 200 million turnover corporate. Lovely. What they did is they said, no, what we really understand is old people, or older people, and what they need. And so they become a travel, media, and financial services group valued in the billions. So that's what I'm talking about. Slightly closer to home, we had a small business conversation with a company who came to us because they had been valued at £700,000 to sell the business. They were two very nice old-ish ladies in late 60s who wanted to retire. They had a travel business, and their valuation was reflective of the travel multiple. So their valuation had been £700,000. What the valuation fundamentally missed was the assets that sat within the top half of that framework. That it was valuing them on an industry benchmark, and I had ignored some of the hidden assets within that business. 18 months later, that business was sold for, would anyone like to guess? 700,000 valuation, 11 million. 11 million. Those old ladies, they would be very upset if I called them old ladies, now live in Fiji, and they still send us Christmas cards. And it's really simple what they did. They just said, what have we got that's unique and fundamentally wonderful about our business? And that was it. So, what am I saying? I'm saying that this is all about vision. I'm saying that what you as entrepreneurs need to do is understand your vision. And that is vision that is both cultural, which is the easy side of things to understand, why we're doing this, what do we stand for, and commercial. How far do we want to take this thing? Do we want a simple, operational, how and what focused business? Or do we want to change the world? If we want to change the world, what do we have in our business that's uniquely powerful, that is going to change the world? And those are your assets. And understand those two things, why and what, and you are an entrepreneur, my son. And that is the future of the business. Now, what's exciting to me personally is that a lot of what I'm talking about has nothing to do with money. So that's a choice. But personally to me, I think we're moving to a world where we're past money. Simon Sinek says it's not about the money. It's very rarely about the money. It's more likely to be about freedom. It's also more likely to be about sustainability. It's more likely to be about giving back. It's more likely to be about social enterprise. Talent will follow purpose. So all we need to do to be leaders in the future is to understand a cultural and a commercial vision. So maybe Napoleon is not so wrong. Maybe what we are actually as entrepreneurs is dealers in hope. Hope for the future for all of us. So maybe the first slide was right. So thank you for your time and for listening, and I hope you have a fantastic day.